Sound check 1 2 3. Sound check 1 2 3.
We have quorum present today, and I'd like to call this meeting for the LRT Subcommittee to order. Reminder that all electronic devices to be switched to a non-audible function during committee meetings. Joining me in the chambers today is Mayor Horvath, Councillor Kassar, Councillor Tammy Huang, Councillor Cameron Crutch, and joining us virtually is Councillor Matt Francis. In terms of non-voting advisors, Brenda Wilson is in the chambers. We have Drina Omasic in the chambers. We have Amanda Stringer in the chambers, and we have Anthony Salimi in the chambers, as well as Sarah Mayo. Joining us virtually is Emily Walsh. So thank you to all of our non-voting members for being at the meeting with us today as well. At this point, may I please have a mover and seconder to approve the agenda as... Oh, wait, before that, are there any changes to the agenda? Over to you, Clerk.
Yes, Chair Nan, there is one change to the agenda. There will be a verbal update entitled Metrolinx Virtual Open House, June 24th, 2025.
Thank you for that. Mover and seconder to approve the agenda as amended. Councillor Huang, Councillor Crutch. Any opposed? Show of hands. Fair. Okay, it carries. On to declarations of interest. Are there any to declare? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of our minutes from the previous meeting, which was held on April 11th this year. May I please have a mover and seconder to adopt the previous minutes? Moved by Councillor Crutch, seconded by Councillor Huang. And this is also an all in favor show of hands vote, not an electronic one. That carries. Thank you. On to our delegations. Before we begin our delegations for today, members are reminded that questions of our delegates are for clarification purposes only. A note to our delegates is that you have 5 minutes to complete your delegation. At the 4-minute mark, you're going to hear the ding. That's a good reminder to you. You've got a minute to wrap up. And for those who are joining us virtually in your delegation, the same applies for you. So first up, we have 6.1 Chris Ritzma, respecting report PED 25184, which is Hamilton LRT procurement and conceptual design update in person. Chris, when you're ready.
Is it on?
Take it away.
Okay, perfect. Hello, welcome for having me. I think this is the first time I've been at the LRT subcommittee. If you've seen me delegate before, you know usually I like to have like a speech ready. I didn't do that this time. It's gonna be more informal, mostly because I have a huge list of very individual things that I would love to send to somebody at some point. But the main reason I'm here today is because I would like to bring up a few things with the newest design that I've seen with regards to what I would like to see discussed with Metrolinx for improvements from the city and from this subcommittee, specifically relating to mostly active transportation elements, but also the transit element as well, specifically. So the first thing I'll bring up is cycling, of course. So there's a few parts of the design that I'd like to kind of bring up that I don't think are fully fleshed out yet. For one, the Ferguson Avenue cycling connection is kind of missing. The city put in bike lights at Main Street, but then at King Street, there's just the LRT just kind of blocks that. I know it's still working on it, but I just wanted to highlight that. Another big thing that perhaps might be seen in a future iteration is the gap between Longwood and Macklin. The LRT new plans do have a great cycling connection now in front of McMaster, but it kind of just stops at Longwood and then restarts at Macklin. I don't know where cyclists are expected to go there, but you know, this is going to probably be like, 6 years of construction, so it's worth fixing it before it gets started. There's a few other areas that the cycling connections, like at Emerson, aren't really shown in the design. The Dundurn Street bicycle lane isn't really shown the southbound direction. And there's some weirdness around the Gage Avenue cycling lanes. The intersection could probably use a little bit more protection at the intersection, especially since it's probably going to see an increase in traffic turning leftbound onto Gage. The other thing I wanted to bring up was pedestrian crossings. There's been an addition of a few pedestrian crossings, but I think that there's probably room for improvement at a couple of places. There's a few gaps of like half a kilometer, specifically around further east. Usually, so like Sanford to Holton is like a 420 meter pedestrian gap. So if you were crossing mid-block between those two, you'd have to like make a huge detour which I think people are just going to jaywalk. That's what I would do. But if you're not able to do that because you're in a wheelchair or you're a senior, you're just kind of out of luck. The main thing I would say about that, though, is there's no problem in giving the transit the main priority. In places like the Netherlands and Europe, oftentimes what they'll do is they'll just let the LRT pass and then you just got to wait when you click a button or something. I would hate to click a button and have like 200 people stop for me. So just give priority to the transit, and then when the transit's passed, you can just let the people cross there. There's no reason why pedestrian crossings being increased has to slow down the transportation. There's a few oddities about stations. Again, I think from the Waterloo-Kitchener example, there's a couple of good examples of where if you don't have an access point at both sides of the station, people will just cross the tracks, which is dangerous, not accessible, and causes problems. And then there's a few road design elements. I don't love that there's still a slip lane design at Queen Street and at University of Maine. I think it's known that slip lanes are dangerous. They allow cars to go very quickly. And part of this exercise would be nice to include all of the Complete Streets guidelines, which is including removing slip lanes, making it safer for pedestrians. And that includes also like dead ending more streets too. Especially out east, there's a bunch of places where like 10 houses have access to King Street, and then the next street over, another 10 houses has access to King Street. I would suggest recommending closure of a few of those streets to reduce conflict points. Conflict points are a thing in like urban planning where, you know, they're just crossovers between different modes. The fewer of those, the less likely it is to be a danger. And on top of that, for car traffic, you know, each access point means another place that cars have to slow down to turn right off of the road. So if you're trying to keep vehicle traffic moving quickly as well, then you don't want that many access points. So I have a whole list.
Do we need a vote? No? Okay, as chair, we're calling a recess for 5 minutes as we've lost our live stream. Back, we had lost our live stream for the LRT subcommittee, and the last minute or so of our delegates' presentation would not have been recorded or seen by the public. That said, I also want to acknowledge, since we are kind of reconvening back in, Councillor Maureen Wilson has joined us, as well as non-voting member Carl Andrus. Okay, so we had a speakers list going. The last thing that we talked about was this. The delegate can submit their correspondence to council for approval and receipt formally of council, and then direction to be able to, if committee members wanted to do so, move to have the correspondence received and directed to staff. First up on the speakers list is Councillor Crutch.
Thanks for your delegation. I'll be having some meetings with Metrolinx at a high level and with LRT staff at the city to discuss sort of what's happening in Ward 2 with new designs. So this will be really helpful information for me to have, so please do send it along. But I have one question for you. You and I both walk around, cycle around Ward 2 a lot. And so we know what the pain points are. We see where pedestrians are having trouble and where we want to improve this and use this project to make sure we get the best return for our investment for the long term. We don't want to shake our heads later and say, we could have done this, we could have done this, we could have done this. What do you think would be a useful way to engage with Ward 2 residents, or any residents, frankly, on this kind of detailed design? It's frankly overwhelming. A lot of this information is overwhelming. What do you think, from your perspective, would be a way to sort of get the kind of feedback you're providing from as many people as possible? What does that look like to you?
Yeah, thank you. Through the chair, I really liked what the city did with the Main Street conversion mapping. It allowed myself and I shared it with many others to individually point out areas and pain points that we saw on a daily basis. You know, obviously the engineers have to make decisions, and there's certain, you know, legitimate constraints of the right of way. But I think when you're actually walking out there and experiencing things, you see things that city staff or even councillors may miss. I see this all the time in my cycling advocacy. Sometimes, you know, they're talking about something out in Stony Creek. I don't usually cycle in Stony Creek. I don't even really drive in Stony Creek that regularly. Most of what I need is downtown. And so when I hear from people from Stony Creek talking about cycling and pedestrian connections, it's great, because it's just not something I was aware of, even though I'm paying attention to the cycling maps, and I can go on Google Maps and take all the photos I like. Unless I'm actually there experiencing what it's like to be in the day-to-day at certain times of the day, maybe you know, maybe it's an issue only at 7 o'clock at night. I don't ever, if I have been there, I've been there at like 3 in the afternoon. So asking local residents to provide their feedback on individual intersections, that kind of fine-grained detail. It may not all make it into the final design, but it can kind of be triaged to kind of see what can be fit in, what can be improved, what did we miss, that type of feedback.
Thanks. And also, I think you touched on, I was going to ask about the scale of that engagement, right? So having one giant meeting where we have thousands of people trying to provide that input's probably not going to be as helpful, in your opinion, as a local approach. So how localized do you see that being?
Yeah, I think having a big meeting is difficult, because if you can't attend it, then you miss out. Yeah, you can always provide an email feedback later, but it's also asking people to watch a recorded meeting later. I think that there's different approaches. I like the online approach because it allows people to access it, but also I think going out and asking people, having town halls, going to different organizations where they've seen specific issues is a good way to kind of get an understanding. And it should be done early in the process, so that way the design's not already finalized, because I know once the engineers have kind of done that final design, they don't want to go back and have to be moving curbs and stuff like that. It's a pain. You have to redo like all these like calculations of like flooding mitigation and stuff. So doing that early on, it's at the 30% design stage, I think. So I don't know if they've gotten to the detailed like water management and stuff like that. So like now would be the time to do that. It's before it goes out to procurement and things like that.
Great. So my takeaways, if I have it right, are the engagement should be early, focused, local.
Yep.
Thanks.
No further speakers on the speakers list, so thank you, Delegate Ritzma, for your delegation. May I please have a mover and seconder to receive it? Moved by Councillor Crutch, moved by the mayor, seconded by Councillor Crutch. All in favor, vote of hands. Thank you. That's received, thank you. Next up is 6.2, James Kemp, respecting report PED 25152, which is change tracking framework for the Hamilton LRT, item 8.1.
Hello.
James, you're online. Thank you so much. So you have 5 minutes. At the 4-minute mark, you know this, you're going to hear a ding. That means you got a minute to wrap up. When you're ready, please proceed.
Thanks very much. Good morning, Madam Chairperson and members of the LRT Subcommittee. Thank you for taking the time to hear from me today. I'm here to speak regarding PED 25152, specifically the change tracking framework for the LRT project, and once again, the omission of persons with disabilities in a demographic in and of itself. 30% of the city of Hamilton report as having at least one disability. If we round the current population off at 600,000, then that represents roughly 180,000 residents. While we share some similarities with the other demographics, some of us are youth, some of us are adult age, and some of us are seniors, we have unique needs and must be treated as a separate demographic. It is my hope that our group will soon be represented at this committee in a non-voting capacity to provide a voice not yet represented. This tracking framework is to track changes from construction through to project completion. We have specific concerns that need to be followed as well. Let us discuss some concerns in the construction phase, for example. Is pedestrian access being properly redirected? Can persons with disabilities still reach their pharmacies or grocery stores with the changes? When the buses are rerouted, are there new stops being made to get people to as close to where they need to go as possible, unlike the current policy for detours? When accessible parking is removed for construction, is there an effort to replace like for like elsewhere, etc.? We need to keep an eye on these issues and more to ensure that persons with disabilities aren't being unduly affected by this city mega project. I know that we weren't wholly missed in this document. Some accessibility issues were briefly mentioned in the other considerations list, but we need to be of a higher priority than that. Another thing that needs to be tracked is the demographic shifts later on in the project. The construction of new affordable and deeply affordable housing will create an exodus of sorts, as there are hundreds of people waiting for an accessible unit. All new city construction will be 20% accessible, which is going to see a massive increase in available units for persons with disabilities. As older buildings are not very accessible, I don't think the LRT Planning Department has accurately predicted what a large infusion of accessible units will be for us. Again, I will raise the accessible parking issue at this phase to ensure that it is being planned for. I'm sure there are a few more reasons to track our group separately, but I've given you enough to get the idea. I seem to keep coming to this committee and saying roughly the same thing, and some of you may wonder why I feel it is necessary, but I keep seeing examples of us being added as an afterthought or not giving our issues weight, so I will keep coming. Once this really gets going and starts being built, we will have little to no input anymore, and we must ensure it's as accessible as possible through all phases of the project, much like was just mentioned. For example, I have significant issues with the newest design published by Metrolinx. If they're actually improving from lessons learned, then why are all the handrails either stainless steel, brushed aluminum, or galvanized metal? We have made it clear that it is invisible to those with vision loss. Where is the guidelining of the platform? Where are the windbreaks on the platforms? Where are the pictograms and the fare payment boxes so we can ensure proper access is available? Will Metrolinx continue with our textured paving symbols as is throughout the rest of the city, and so on and so forth? I also want to thank the former delegate or previous delegate for pointing out the pedestrian crossing. I did not catch that because, as Councillor Crutch mentioned, it's a very complex design and there's a lot of details. So ensuring that there is enough access points for pedestrians to cross the LRT is important as well. So we can all see the potential of this project and eventual impact, but we must ensure it is not creating an undue hardship for persons with disabilities. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Delegate Kemp. Speakers list is open. Does anybody have any questions? Thank you. Over to Member Andrus.
Thank you very much, as always, for your delegation and insight. Part of the change tracking framework under consideration before us is, of course, metrics. Now, you did mention a few touched on in your delegation. I'm curious, though, if, especially during construction, if you could elaborate on exactly what can be done to make sure that we're doing that proper audit for accessibility during construction so that we're being proactive as opposed to reactive to complaints and needs, making sure that things are set up ahead of time. So I'm wondering if you could take me through some of the things that you would like to see added in addition to the ones you mentioned in your delegation by city staff, and also what you imagine the way that that data can be recorded, monitored, and tracked. Thank you.
That was a very complex question. Through the chair, thank you very much, Carl Andrus. First off, I would like to recommend a similar approach to as was suggested, getting to see the people, getting to meet the people, having an open conduit for persons with disabilities to raise these complaints directly with the project as it goes forward. Because much like it was already mentioned, you don't notice some of these issues until you're on the ground seeing it day to day through different time periods. Construction might be easy to navigate during the day when workers are there to assist people, but how do you navigate after work when the job closes down and all you're just left with is some signs and some fencing? Somebody with a white cane will get lost very easily and not understand how to get from place to place. So these are important things to keep checking in with the community from each step. But we can only plan for so much. As proactive as we would like to be, there's always stuff that we're going to miss because it is complex. But keeping an open line of communication. I don't remember the rest of the question at this point, sorry.
No problem. I should have staggered my questions, so that was my fault. The second question was around metrics reporting tracking, was just to see a part of this key step is, of course, is tracking things over time to compare them. So I'm just curious if you had any insight on the challenges that may be posed for tracking accessibility issues and what advice you might have for city staff on what metrics they might monitor and how best practices might be to do that.
Thank you. Through the chair, I think that the LRT department has a good framework in place for this. With the change framework, it did seem to section off the city into certain areas so that it's easier to break down, as was mentioned, pain points. It just needs to be also accounted for of the needs of persons with disabilities. So there just needs to be another column added to their changing framework as we go, I believe. I'm
Thank you
sorry.
very much. And very lastly, recently, well, actually not that recently, last year, the Hamilton Community Benefits Network, along with the YWCA Hamilton, engaged in a disability, or I should say a gender-based audit of future LRT station stops, taking program residents from YWCA programs and touring them around various sites along the LRT corridor to perform an audit based on their concerns. HCBN is looking to partner with disability groups in our network, but also perhaps the ACPD to conduct a similar audit in Hamilton with the support of the committee. It's something I'll be bringing to your committee later this year. I just wanted to know, I understand that there's some works underway for perhaps a trip out to Waterloo to do an audit, but I'm wondering if there's an opportunity for the HCBN to partner with the Accessibility Committee here at Hamilton to perhaps perform that audit ahead of time to get some of that on the ground perspective.
Well, thank you. I can't speak for the committee specifically. I know that I will support and work with anything for sure. If you bring to the committee, I don't see why they would not support it. Just for a point of clarification, we've already been to Waterloo, which I believe was last year or the year before. What we're looking is seeing the most recent station is built, which is Finch, I believe. We're in the process of organizing that now. So I don't see why we would not be willing or very welcome to partnering.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for your questions. Next up, we have Councillor Kassar.
Thanks, Chair, and thank you, James, for continuing to show up and speak and share what's important. You went through some suggestions very quickly, so I just wanted to rewind a little bit. I think you were mentioning some indicators and metrics that you think staff should consider. Could you just go back to that and then go through them a little more slowly so we can all understand and make sure we've captured that? Thank you.
Okay, second. Let me just go back to through the chair. So some of the concerns, one of the ones that I brought up before is pedestrian access being properly redirected. So I've been working with the working group, the Built Environment Working Group, with city staff to try and improve construction site accessibility. And it's not an easy fix. There's no fencing designed to be white cane detectable, for example. How do you redirect textured paving, or how do you create temporary textures to redirect traffic when nobody is there to assist? So these need to be tracked as we go. I'm sure we're going to have lessons learned and improve, and I'm sure by the end of 10 years, we're going to have this thing locked in, but it needs to be something that's constantly monitored. Can persons with disabilities still reach their pharmacies or grocery stores with the changes? So if we're redirecting traffic and say we're doing a large water main project, we have to ensure that people are still able to get to the local areas that they can get to. This is an area where keeping a line of communication open is essential. When the buses are rerouted, or the new stops being made to people as close to where they go to, as need to go as possible, unlike current policy. Right now, when there's usually a detour, there might be a few exceptions, but from my experience, when there's a detour, the bus leaves the bus route and does not stop between that leaving the bus route until it reconnects with the bus route on the other side. Now, for people with disabilities, especially people with walkers or canes that are having significant issues traveling, this can significantly create barriers that are just insurmountable. And we're having some taxi issues, so that might not be the best idea to fix that. When accessible parking is removed for construction, is there an effort to replace like for like elsewhere? For example, down King Street, there's parking on the streets. When that's removed, where else are people going to go for accessible parking to businesses downtown while this is all going on, or businesses anywhere along the corridor? So we need to ensure that we're still allowing people to get where they need to go that drive and need to park as close as possible or as best as possible. So that was for construction. There's a number of issues, other issues, like, for example, the pedestrian crossing that needs to be tracked. I will have to go through the plans in a more fine-tooth comb to see the distances between, like, for example, if there's too much distance between a pedestrian crossing of the LRT, perhaps we might want to create benches midway along so that people can actually stop and rest. So these are considerations that not everybody needs to worry about. And then moving on to the future for construction of new affordable, deeply affordable, we're going to see people changing. I know a lot of accessible units were built up on the mountain because they had some of the more newer construction, or they had some housing complexes built up there. But we're going to see a lot of people moving down the corridor as these are built. So we're going to need to provide for more accessible pathways around the areas towards parks and industry and business and whatnot. So I think I've covered. So I can go in more detail in the future, but I think I got a good bit.
Yeah, thank you very much, through you, Chair. That's all my question.
Thank you, Councillor. No further speakers on the speakers list. Nobody else is indicating. Thank you again, Delegate Kemp, for your delegation. May I please have a mover and seconder to receive? Moved by Councillor Cassar, seconded by Councillor Huang. All those in favor indicate by show of hand vote, and that carries unanimously. Thank you. On to 7.1. First up is next steps with recruiting new non-voting advisors to ensure climate justice is considered. And over to Project Manager of Climate Change Initiatives, Beatrice Ekwa-Ekoko, please.
Good morning, Subcommittee. I'm Beatrice Ekoko with the Office of Climate Change Initiatives in the GM's Office of Planning and Economic Development. I'm here to give an update concerning next steps on recruiting new non-voting advisors to the LRT Subcommittee to ensure climate justice is considered. As presented in our April report to this subcommittee, the recruitment process for new advisors will occur by invitation from voting members of the LRT Subcommittee in alignment with the subcommittee's terms of reference and consistent with the process that was used to recruit existing advisors. The recruitment process entails that staff advise and support the subcommittee in identifying and determining which organizations to invite to participate on the subcommittee by an advisor representative of their organization. Once agreed upon by the voting members, formal invitations will be sent to select organizations detailing the purpose and mandate of the subcommittee. For good participatory planning and meaningful engagement to occur, first comes intentional relationship building. This is what OCCI staff have been working on over the last year, that is laying the foundation and cultivating relationships with local organizations that serve these frontline populations, and doing so specifically through the climate justice framework co-design that is in progress, based on equity dimensions of climate justice, and which is a collaboration with 12+ local community partners. We have heard from some of these community partners that there is a desire for more opportunities to contribute to policy and decision-making, especially in regard to how these might directly impact the populations they work with. Participation on the LRT subcommittee is an obvious opportunity, and so staff have begun socializing the direction of the LRT subcommittee recruitment with these community partners, all the while communicating that the mandate of the subcommittee is to focus on implementation of the LRT project. In moving to propose up to 6 organizations for consideration, staff is exploring how best to maximize this opportunity for these voices to be at the table by focusing on groups that work with an intersection of unique populations, that is, specified categories of frontline communities. For example, women, low-income indigenous populations, or persons with disabilities, low-income rental populations, so you can see that intersectionality. And finally, OCCR staff plan to bring to this committee a curated list of the potential organizations that the LRT subcommittee can approve it in a September meeting. And that's my update. Thank you.
Thank you for that update. Committee members, the speakers list is open. Any questions or comments? Seeing none, then may I please have a mover and seconder to receive the information? Thank you, Councillor Huang, seconded by Councillor Francis. Are you indicating a desire to speak as well, Councillor Francis? Just seconding, thank you. And is that an electronic? No, show of hands. Okay, show of hands vote, please. Thank you, and that carries. Thank you for that. On to 7.2, our Hamilton LRT procurement and conceptual design update. Director Abdul Sheikh has an overview to share with us.
Okay. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of LRT Subcommittee. My name is Abdul Sheikh, Director of Hamilton LRT Project Office. First of all, I would like to welcome our newest GM PED, Mr. Arvind Prasad, to the first LRT Subcommittee. So thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on recent developments related to Hamilton LRT project. So this presentation offers a brief overview of the Hamilton LRT procurement process and the recent updates to the conceptual design, which was published by Metrolinx. Further details can be found in the information report that is in front of you today. Metrolinx is responsible for overall delivery of the project, and given the complexities involved, the major construction will be delivered in 2 main procurement packages. The first package will include all civil work and utilities, technically all city infrastructure. This includes all private and public utilities and civil structures, road and urban realm, and relocation and renewal of longitudinal utilities. This also includes the urban realm, including streetscape, pedestrian safety, cycling, and HSR integration. The second package will cover the LRT stops, rail and system, what they call SRS, and these are technically all Metrolinx infrastructure, and which includes rail system, operation and maintenance storage facilities, and integration of light rail vehicles delivered for revenue services. And there is also potential to include tasks related to the operation and maintenance of the LRT system. Additionally, there are advanced enabling works required prior to the commencement of major construction, which includes selected private and public utilities, mainly off corridor. And some of these currently underway and being led by the city on behalf of Metrolinx. So with regards to procurement, for package 1, Metrolinx initiated the request for qualification for package 1 in November 2024. Our request for qualification, also called RFQ, which the release event was attended by a range of officials, including representatives from the city, federal and provincial governments, Metrolinx, and other key organizations. Metrolinx is recommending the Alliance Contracting Delivery method for Package 1, which is a form of collaborative contracting for the construction. The Alliance Contracting Delivery method consists of 4 key milestones. Request for qualification, what we call RFQ. This is an initial qualification stage which has recently been completed. And through RFQ process, Metrolinx has selected 4 qualified teams to proceed with the request for proposal. The second milestone is request for proposal, RFP. Metrolinx issued the request for proposal last month on May 12th. At this stage, 4 selected teams will submit their proposal, which is currently scheduled for submission for the end of this year. Then third milestone is Alliance Development Agreement, what we call ADA. So after receiving the detailed proposal from those 4 selected teams, Metrolinx will need to select one company to enter into the Alliance Development Agreement. After the execution of Alliance Development Agreement, a development phase of the project will initiate, where the parties will collaboratively work together to develop the project details, including the detailed design and project construction schedules. And then the final milestone is Project Alliance Agreement. So after the completion of development phase, Metrolinx will then enter into the alliance, what they call Project Alliance Agreement with the selected team. So this will be an initiation of implementation phase where you will see the major construction begins. And it is important to note that the timeline for major construction are still to be determined, which will come through the development phase as mentioned under the Alliance Development Agreement. So as part of ongoing Hamilton LRT procurement process, 4 teams have been shortlisted by Metrolinx to advance to the request for proposal stage, as I mentioned earlier. And I'd like to highlight that all of 4 teams, including strong Canadian construction companies participating, reinforcing the significant local and national interest in delivering this transformative project. The 4 companies are Hamilton Synergy Alliance, which is led by Atkins Reels, formerly SNC, and Steel City Alliance, which is led by Dufferin Construction, and Canadian Murphy Joint Venture, which is led by Murphy Infrastructure. And then the 4th one is Hamilton Transit Alliance, which is led by Aecon Infrastructure. So these teams bring a depth of experience in major infrastructure delivery, and their presence in the process signal confidence in both the scope and the scale of Hamilton LRT project. While procurement is underway, Metrolinx continues to collaborate with city and third-party stakeholders to advance enabling works, what we call early works as well. These are essential early activities that pave the way for major construction and help to keep the project on track. So I will now move to the second recent development, which is LRT conceptual design. The design currently available on the public website reflects from 2017 Environmental Project Report Addendum, which provided foundation of original concept for the Hamilton LRT project. Since that time, the city has adopted new and updated design standard and guideline, which we previously mentioned in various LRT subcommittee, which require a reassessment of earlier concept to ensure alignment with current policies and community expectations. In addition, Metrolinx has made some modification to design completed under the 2017 Environmental Project Report. As part of this evaluation, several design modifications have already been shared with the council through various previous reporting to the council and LRT subcommittee. Thank you, Councilor. So these changes reflected both city priorities and lessons learned from other major transit projects, which is reflected in updated concept design. So most recently, in May 2025, Metrolinx published an updated concept design on its project website. This update reflects ongoing project consideration, but it's important to note that the design is still subject to further refinement during the development phase as detailed technical work continues. So in terms of next step on conceptual design or design update, city staff are currently working with various service areas across the city to identify betterment candidates, which will be in addition to Metrolinx based design, what you currently see on the design. We will also work with area ward councillor to get their input on city betterments. And we have already met with a number of councillors on this item. So these information will brought forward to LRT subcommittee for their input and approval. As I mentioned earlier, the design will continue to evolve during the development phase when Metrolinx select the project partner. And this slide also shows the website link to the current conceptual design, which was released by Metrolinx last month. So this concludes a high-level overview of the recent project development on procurement and design. More details are provided in information report in front of you today, especially some of the key changes made from 2017 to now is already included in the information report. And I would like to extend my thanks to the committee member for providing this opportunity. And if you have any question, my team and I would be happy to respond. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. We do have a growing speakers list, so do you want to stay there for the questions? Okay. First up, we have Councillor Wilson. Second in line, we have Member Andrus. Councillor Wilson.
Thank you, Chair Dan, and to you and all the members. I do apologize for being about 5 minutes late. I had a personal appointment that ran late, so my apologies. I think my first question is in relation to where Director Sheikh may have left off. I obviously have some questions pertaining to the revised design within the boundaries of Ward 1, but not exclusively. And I rather than perhaps bog down the time of the committee's membership with my specific questions, I'm happy to do that, but seeking some counsel on the best way and means to communicate those questions, perhaps some concerns, perhaps to forward some perhaps opportunities, knowing that it is a Metrolink design. I'm just trying to understand the process a little better. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, Councillor Wilson, as I mentioned previously in my LRT subcommittee, the previous design was published on, which was published on our city website and Metrolink website for 2017. Mm-hmm. And our team was pushing hard because there were a number of alignment changes and design modifications were made. The purpose of today conceptual design update to bring all those changes which were made post 2017 mm-hmm. to bring into one place. So this is a great opportunity to provide this conceptual update where the design sits and get input from the public and this, members yourself, so that we continue to discuss with Metrolinx on design update. I can also mention that there are some, councillors, especially Ward 1, as you probably be thinking about the cycling connectivity, which one of the delegates also mentioned, which we are actively having those discussion with Metrolinx, and where we said because the corridor is pretty tight, right? So there is lots of obstruction to build that cycling, but we are actively working with Metrolinx, and sometimes these could be the betterment, which will be additional city municipal infrastructure at the cost by the city. Mm-hmm. So we are having those discussion, and which we plan to bring to the LRT subcommittee later this year. So the design, in summary, the design will be continuously evolving, and then we will be bringing more information to the LRT subcommittee as we have. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to also provide a caveat, if I can. It's my opinion that this design is superior to that which of the 2017, and perhaps I'll put my comment into a question in that I perceive a movement, a shift, if you will, to maximize this investment in its interface with other types of mobility, but specifically to with public space. And to that end, and by that I mean the ability to carve out space for people. And I've always suggested once you get people, you're going to get a hot dog cart. Once you get a hot dog cart, you're going to get a coffee shop. Once you get a coffee shop, you're going to get more commercial and residential investment, and you are going to have an opportunity to rebuild this city for people. And that should always be our starting point, not just movement, efficient, fast movement. So if I could turn that into a question, if I could ask the director perhaps to share his perception of some of the principles that have informed this revised design versus the first one. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair, Councilor Wilson. Excellent question. And, I think we have done a number of briefing to LRT subcommittee, and we actually provided what the themes we are looking at. The pedestrian safety is one, cycling connectivity is another one, right? So we also mentioned that there are now city new standard, for example, complete street. So when we're reviewing these designs, we are putting these lens. One of the example, Councillor, I can mention that there was a third eastbound lane from McMaster Longwood, right? So we were able to successfully negotiate with Metrolinx to convert that third-bound eastbound lane to the cycling bi-directional facility, right? So same thing, I can give you more example, the pedestrian public realm. Public realm is, boulevard area, what we call behind the curb area.
Yeah.
So initial design was 3 meter narrow, and we tried to find wherever there was opportunities available to go to the complete street, which is 4.7 meter, right?
Yeah.
So we are continuously working on, and there are some property consents and those kind of things which we are continuously negotiating with Metrolinx that if you are already acquiring the property, why don't you acquire, 1.7 meter more to have the wider pedestrian. So, continuously evolving, but, I would like to give this a conceptual base design at this time. And we will be working together, and Councillor, we will also be briefing you and sitting with your office as well to bring the design update within your ward. And then if you have any specific concern, we can address those concerns as we working on the design development.
Thank you, Chair. I realize that is my time. I'd like to thank the director. As he knows, I've already sent an email to him with 7 points for discussion. And that move from 3 to 4.7 is massive. It is therein lies the possibility to make this city really successful, and a city for people and for economic exchange and for people exchange, and just a much more habitable, beautiful place. So thank you for that score. Appreciate all your work to date, you and your team. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Member Andrus.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair, Director. My question is, of course, as always, about engagement. As you did mention, the 2017 Environmental Project Report was really the last fundamental time that serious engagement was done around design, with open houses and a series of events where folks were shown designed plans and allowed to solicit feedback from the general public. And I understand through your presentation today that you'll be collaborating with councillors along the ward to look at these urban realm improvements that are part of Package 1. But I'm curious if there is going to be opportunities to work with Metrolinx and the public to take these designs out and to have them set up and to solicit some feedback, as we heard from the delegates today. There is some public interest on definitely providing feedback, especially around pedestrian crossings, and there may be different neighborhoods have different needs that the councillors themselves may not be fully aware of. So that question is around that engagement piece, and if Metrolinx or the City of Hamilton has any plans to basically shop these designs to the public.
And through you, Madam Chair, Member Andrews, I think we will have to take this question to Metrolinx about public consultation. What I understand that formal consultation are already being done through the Environmental Project Report. And this is a standard practice that as we move to the detailed design, the internal staff with the key stakeholder work together, right? But here I see in the City of Hamilton, we do have a strong presence of LRT subcommittee, presence of various organizations. So it's my duty to bring, as soon as the design is evolving, to the LRT subcommittee to get the input, just like what we are receiving here. So these are really, from the delegation, we did receive very good input, right? So And in addition, Metrolinx has a strong community engagement program, as you see, right? So they have a presence in the office as well. They are canvassing the property as well, all the properties across the corridor. So if people have any concern, they will get those feedback so that they can discuss city staff. So they do have a strong community engagement program through canvassing the property, through the office they have, also with elected official. Quarterly, they are meeting with elected official. So in my opinion, there are lots of opportunity compared to other municipalities where I worked, where we can get these input through these sessions and apply to the updated design going forward.
Thank you very much through the chair for that response. I do understand. I guess my challenge is that 2017 was 8 years ago, and that these are pretty substantive design changes in terms of what's being done. And I'm concerned that the kinds of opportunities that Metrolinx is presenting for engagement don't necessarily center the designs themselves the way that the open houses and a lot of the information that went into the original EPR back in 2017 in terms of specific engagements and opportunities for folks. So folks might not be aware that there are designs there and there's a chance to comment on where pedestrian crosswalks or even the way that traffic is being directed or all of these other things that were discussed very heavily back in 2017 when there was a massive amount of engagement done by both the City of Hamilton and Metrolinx on that file. So in your conversations through the chair, director, I would appreciate knowing if Metrolinx has any ability to perhaps maybe do something a little bit more fulsome as this project moves forward and as we kind of move into that what is it, PAA, the Project Alliance Agreement, when we get into the final designs specifications. So thank you.
And through you, Madam Chair, we will take this to Metrolinx and try our best to have the public consultation for the entire corridor. Right? Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Member Omazik.
Director, thank you for the update. On the next steps, just a question around the Alliance Development Agreement. Do we have a sense from past experience how long it takes to develop that agreement?
And through you, Madam Chair, member, again, it's a question to Metrolinx, but I can just mention that because this is the first time, especially for City of Hamilton working on Alliance, Metrolinx is working on Alliance contract model. What we understand that it's going to take from 18 to 24 months, right? For Alliance development, which we call development phase, right?
Right. Thank you.
But I just want to mention that during this phase, it's not just, during the design development or schedule development, Metrolinx will explore a number of early works, right? Right now, there are a number of early works with City, Electra, Bell, and Bridge, but they will continue to explore that if there are any more early works they can do while they are in the development phase, they will bring forward those in construction.
Thank you. No further questions at this time. So at this point, may I please have a mover and seconder to receive the information report? Moved by Councillor Huang, seconded by Councillor Kassar. It's a vote by show of hands. Thank you. That's unanimous. On to a verbal update, which we added to the agenda today, which is the Metrolinx open house that was held on June 24th. Back over to you, Director.
Through you, Madam Chair, this is Abdul Sheikh, Director, Hamilton LRT Project Office. First of all, I would like to introduce our newest LRT team member, Eleni Jalput, who has started working full-time on LRT project as a Senior Communication Officer since May 12th. And there was a recent virtual open house by Metrolinx. I'm going to ask Eleni to provide a brief summary. It happened just 2 days ago, so whatever information you can provide to the LRT subcommittee member, that would be helpful, Eleni. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Through you, Madam Chair, I'd like to provide an update on the virtual open house that happened on Tuesday, June 24th from 6:30 to 8 p.m. It was attended by Metrolinx and city staff, and this open house was led and heavily advertised by Metrolinx. The promotion of the event included a targeted mail drop along the corridor, a newsletter, elected officials, notifications, and paid advertising as well on social media. The virtual open house had strong public interest and was overall a big success. The total registrants were 999, and at our busiest point, the attendance was 360 registrants who were logged on. Both registration and attendance broke records. Metrolinx used Slido as a platform through which the public could submit their questions. The questions could be upvoted by attendees, and that let the moderator know which questions were top of mind for Hamiltonians. The top themes of the questions included the following: the construction timing, lessons learned from other Metrolinx transit projects, operating and construction costs, HSR transit connections, traffic impacts, and finally, Main Street two-way conversion. Just a bit of further information for you. After the vote, if people's questions didn't make it to the queue during the event, Metrolinx invited everyone to email their questions to the Metrolinx community engagement team, and they provided their email and their socials. The presentation and recording will be available on the Hamilton Metrolinx project website. Currently, the presentation itself is posted, so folks can look at the slides if you want to take a peek at that later today. And finally, once the virtual open house is up and posted on the website, the whole recording of the event, elected officials will be emailed the link. And that's the verbal update. Thank you very much.
Okay, speakers list is open. First is Member Andrus. Anybody else? Okay, go ahead.
Just a very quick question through the chair. If you could share with the clerk that link to be distributed to all the LRT subcommittee members, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
The chair will do, and thank you.
Terrific. Okay, so mover and seconder to receive the information update. Moved by Councillor Cassara, seconded by Councillor Crutch. Show of hands, voting members. Councillor Wilson. Thank you, and that carries. That brings us over to item 8 on our agenda, which 8.1 is PED Report 25152, which is change tracking framework for the LRT. Over to LRT Technical Services and Approvals Coordinator, Manager, no? Yes? Yes, Manager. Shala, thank you.
Through you, Madam, if you can allow me to introduce this report. Thank you. So again, my name is Abdul Sheikh, Director, LRT Project Office, and I would like to provide a brief introduction of the staff report for consideration, which is PED 25152 before you, before our staff goes into the details. So at the November 15, 2024 LRT subcommittee meeting, staff provided a terms of reference for a change tracking framework for the Hamilton LRT project, which was in response to a council-approved motion. And as part of the same report, staff recommendation was approved by the LRT subcommittee, which directed its staff to report back to LRT subcommittee and a final set of recommended indicator, which could be tracked on a regular basis, and also mention of reporting that is structured to be provided in 2025. So our office has submitted a report for consideration in response to that approved staff recommendation. Farhad Shela, who is Manager LRT Technical Services and Approvals Coordination with LRT Project Office, has been leading tasks since beginning. And Farhad will now walk you through the presentation and provide an overview of the report content. Following that presentation, we'll be happy to address any questions you have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director. Over to you, Manager.
Thank you, Abdul, for the introduction. Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the LRT Subcommittee. My name is Farhad Shala, Manager of LRT Technical Services and Approvals Coordination with the city's LRT Project Office. This presentation will provide an overview of Hamilton's LRT change tracking framework, including a preliminary list of recommended indicators for the LRT Subcommittee's consideration and approval. The next few slides will include a brief mention of the relevant subcommittee motion and previous reported works, a refresher of the key definitions and tracking area, some elaboration of change indicator development, who we consulted, staff's recommended indicators, our suggested reporting structure for the upcoming changes, and today's recommendation and the next steps. Abdul provided you with some background. I will just go over that one more time very briefly. At the September 20th, 2024 LRT subcommittee, a motion was given to staff to report back on the LRT subcommittee respecting terms of reference for establishing a baseline for measures that would enable the city to track changes over time. The changes would be economic, environmental, or social changes. At the November 15, 2024 LRT subcommittee, the terms of reference for this framework was shared and was approved and has been used as the basis of our work developing a framework and the associated set of indicators for tracking change. Further to the immediate goal of the change tracking framework, I would like to highlight that while this tool will allow us to get a pulse on the economic, environmental, and social changes in the LRT area, there will be a number of other benefits that will come along, such as keeping the staff and council and public and Metrolinx informed of changes leading to better decision-making, tracking measures to maximize benefits of LRT, observing and comparing trends citywide, guiding planning initiatives for expanding other rapid transit programs in the city. The purpose of the report is to recommend 38 preliminary indicators that can be used to track changes in a defined area over time. As a refresher, dimensions are economic, environmental, and social aspects that can change over time. Indicators are different ways of how we believe change can be measured in a quantitative manner. And metrics are used either as percentages, linear meters, square meters, and so on to help the measurement. For instance, looking at the table to the right, changes in population will be measured either by the number of people or percentage of people living in an area. That would be one way of looking at social changes. Another example would be tracking cycling infrastructure and multi-use paths as a way of measuring it in kilometers, as a way of observing and studying environmental changes over time during the course of LRT implementation and when it goes into operation.
Through you, Madam Chair, sorry interrupting, Farhad. I think your slides, speaking notes may not be aligned.
Pardon me. Thanks for catching that.
Thank you.
Service areas are those city divisions and service areas who supported us during the development of the framework and the indicators. The LRT area refers to a 14-kilometer stretch east to west by 1.6-kilometer boundary identified for tracking change. The length of the area is identical to the length of the project from McMaster in the west to Eastgate Square in the east. While the width of the area, 1.6 kilometers going north-south, was selected based on an 800-meter distance that can comfortably be completed by walking within 10 minutes. The proposed boundary for change tracking framework is aligned with the city's planning, the city's MTSA, Major Transit Station Area, a final report that was completed by the city's planning group in sustainable communities. For every indicator explored to date, analysis was also conducted to confirm if more meaningful information can be drawn by reporting for smaller sub-areas. And we refer to them as influence tracking areas, 1 to 5, and every one of those will represent a ward. The process of identifying and defining indicators has been guided by council priorities, city building targets, and best practices from municipalities with other rapid transit implementation experiences. Staff have considered meaningful measures of change and looking at indicators that can provide valuable information on economic, environmental, and social changes. When looking at indicators, we wanted to make sure there is available data and reporting tools that can be leveraged at this point at no cost and no additional resource implications. And that those indicators, we would be able to pull information for them for a defined area on a regular basis. So this will not be a one-time, it will be an ongoing reporting. Briefly highlighting again that we had extensive internal and external consultation. The development of the preliminary list of recommended indicators are owed to extensive consultation staff, which are outlined in Appendix D of the report. Specifically, we consulted early consultation with our Inclusion, Diversity, Equity, Accessibility team. We consulted Hamilton Police Service. We have our internal steering committee who guides our advancement of the framework. We had one isolated conversation with Community Engagement and Climate Justice Working Group. We received feedback, and we had that conversation with them, as well as our strategic advisor for this project and also Metrolinx. Many of our recommended indicators were inspired by change tracking tools currently in use by other municipalities. We also studied relevant literature themed on the relationship amongst people, transit, and land to inform development of indicators. As mentioned, our recommendation consists of only indicators that have available and reliable data that can be reported on a regular basis. The LRT Project Office, in close collaboration with key service areas, recommends a preliminary list of 38 recommended indicators as outlined in Figure 1 of the report and elaborated in Appendix A. Once again, we needed to make sure there are meaningful measures, they provide valuable information on change, and that they are associated with available data and reporting tools that can be leveraged at no cost and additional resources and can be reported on a regular basis. This is where the main content of the presentation is. Per Figure 1 in the report, 11 indicators have been identified as good means of learning about the economic state of the LRT area, and the changes over time can provide an indication of economic change within the area. From an environmental perspective, 5 indicators have been identified. For social state of the LRT area, 20 indicators are recommended to set the baseline and reporting of social changes. Per Cultural Plan 2023, staff proposed 2 indicators that can fall within that pillar, cultural state. Figure 1 of the report lists the 38 indicators, and Appendix A provides the outlines or more details. At this point, I'd like to reflect very quickly on what Member James Kemp provided on behalf of Accessibility Committee of People with Disabilities. One thing that comes to my mind right away in here, Member James Kemp talked about accessible parking and removal of those. That's one item which I feel very positive we can take back and work with staff to track changes in number of accessible parking spaces. So that's something which we'll need to look at and report back. That's a very good example of a numeric assessment of change over time, and we will look into it. From a pool of over 60 indicators that we investigated and analyzed, many were not recommended due to a number of reasons that we are outlining here. Once we looked at them in more detail, we realized they may not provide meaningful information, that many of those were not tracked citywide, and therefore staff do not have reliable tools or data to report. They are at the very earliest stages of a draft policy or new policy, and therefore they're not tangible indicators. And many of the items we touched on have they're design related mostly. They're not to be tracked over time as a change, but they are more of design considerations that we need to consider as we go through design development or construction of the project. As part of the reporting structure for the framework, subject to today's approval of the recommended indicators, staff envisioned to set the baseline and report on the first set of changes in Q1 of 2026. The reporting in Q1 2026 will also include additional learning and results of staff investigating the application of climate justice lens to determine if other meaningful indicators or sub-indicators can be included as part of today's recommendation. Once the baseline is established in Q1 2026, the subsequent reports in 2027 and after that will primarily focus on reporting change over time as applicable. Aiming for next report on this topic in Q1 2026, today, staff recommend that the preliminary list of recommended indicators for use in change tracking framework for Hamilton LRT, as shown in Figure 1, in this report and further described in Appendix A, be approved, and that the staff be directed to report in Q1 of 2026 on the framework, including baseline conditions and initial trends where available. As part of next steps, between now and 2026, LRT Project Office will collaborate with service areas to receive data and set the baseline for the recommended indicators, and will further investigate if any refinement to any of the indicators would be warranted, applying the climate justice lens. This information will be packaged and presented in early 2026. As a final note, I would like to highlight that the primary goal of tracking economic, environmental, and social changes in the LRT area is to get a sense and inform staff, council, and public about using data-driven decision-making, enable measures to maximize benefits of LRT, allowing and comparing with the trends citywide, as well as informing our decision-making and planning for other rapid transit initiatives in the city. At this point, I would like to thank you for your listening, and we would welcome any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you for that overview, Manager. First up, we have Councillor Huang. Second speaker, we have indicated Member Andrus and Member Omasek. Thank you.
Does the manager want to stay there, or does he want to go back to his seat?
That's a question for the manager. Would you like to go back to your seat?
I will go back and work through this with my team.
Sounds good.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, over to you, Councillor Huang.
Okay. Chair, thank you. Thank you for this presentation. It is extremely helpful. It is a lot. It's very fulsome. I have two questions. First is, how will you do this? Because there's a lot of metrics, there's a lot of different ways to capture this information, and that will lead into my second question later. But how are you going to do this?
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you very much for the question. The first thing comes to my mind is we will report on where we see significant changes. So that's one area. We will be looking at all of them. We will see where the changes are happening. If they are status quo, we may not necessarily bring, but if we see significant changes, we will bring in. Over time, we will learn what information will be useful to this audience and overall to the city, and we may focus on specific areas. So in my mind, we may not necessarily bring changes for all 38 or more. It may become more focused on particular areas over time or when we see significant changes.
Just as a clarification point then, I absolutely understand that, but how are you doing that? Are you going to use a technology solution? How are you going to track this? Just because it's, again, this will lead into my second question. So what is the actual in the weeds, like how are you going to do this? Are you going to hire summer students to go out and canvas and do all of these like physical counts, or are you using existing data in order to give us the baseline, or are you actually going to use a new technology solution to help you with tracking this?
Through you, Madam Chair, thanks again for the question. The 38 indicators are based on available data. So there is no need for any further, to your point, any counting or any future work. We have done extensive work just to make sure this information is available. It comes from reliable data, and they can be extracted from or for the boundaries that we defined. This information is currently available in the city, citywide. It's a matter of filtering it for the area that we are looking at.
Okay, excellent. That leads me to my next question, which is around customer service. And as the council has identified it as a strategic priority to increase customer service, trust and transparency within the city, this is literally going to be a project that will generate a significant amount of commentary. You know, just to be brash about the whole thing, it's going to cause a lot of kerfuffle. So I think that the challenge that I'm struggling to see with this framework is how do you tie that back to customer service? And then what are the tools in which you're going to do that to identify customer sentiment? How do we respond quickly? How do we leverage communication tools in order to actually make the messaging being heard, especially when we start to see some of these challenges with redirects, detours, all of that stuff. So the customer service aspect is so incredibly important, and I'd like to really understand how does this framework first gauge customer sentiment right from the get-go, but two is how do we actually continue to keep better communication from a customer sentiment, customer service perspective?
Through you, Madam Chair, excellent question. In my opinion, that would be education. Because as soon as we bring the first set of changes, or in future, some of those changes, depending on what they are, sometimes they are getting better, sometimes they're getting worse. There are, we kind of gave some indication of how things may change as part of Appendix A. We have some senses of how things will go about. But in my opinion, connecting with the public and information, this information will be open to the public. They will see the changes. In my opinion, we will need to we'll need to explain, we will need to educate and say these changes are what you see now are not something that will carry on. These things are over time, they will change, and we will have to provide some narrative around the changes and explain what those changes are and the reasons around them.
You, Madam Chair, I just would like to add what Farhad has just mentioned. As you know, like the tracking, what our job will be, like to provide the transparency to the LRT subcommittee, when we are bringing the base information on how this change is evolving. But as you can see, we are working with various service areas across the whole city, right? For example, economic development, right? So when they see there is some negativity or adverse impact, right? So that will be their job to look into it, how this could be improved upon, right? So we will just provide the data along with summary, right? But our expectation is that each service area will work to bring to the positive sign, right? So we will be working with various service areas to bring that information. Oh, by the way, there's adverse impact. Can you look into it? And they will be applying the mitigation measures accordingly.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I wonder if in the next iteration, you could actually include a framework a framework indicator that specifically says customer service. Because in all 38, there is nothing that actually uses the two words of customer service together. So I struggle because I think about the small businesses, and as much as you put it in as an economic indicator, there is one indicator that talks about support for business, but that doesn't speak about customer service there. So if you can think about it holistically from a customer service lens, I think that that would be something that we can first get a baseline as to what we're currently doing in terms of how we are actually gauging customer service, and then that's the opportunity for us to do better. Thank you, Chair. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Councillor. Next up, we have Member Andrus, followed by Member Mazick, and then followed by Member Walsh.
Thank you very much through the chair. Thank you for bringing this presentation forward. I have some small criticism/concerns around the tracking of the social fabric of the LRTs and how I feel that some of the metrics selected might not fully accommodate for transit-induced or rapid transit-induced displacement and gentrification. Although I do see some good indicators on social housing, we're not tracking, for example, bedroom counts in rental units. We tend to see in transit corridors a prevalence of bachelors and single bedroom units versus family-friendly units being built in larger scale developments. So getting a sense of what's going on both in the public housing sector but private housing sector for bedroom counts as well as affordability, I think would be an excellent metric. I also noticed in your demographic information, we are not looking at all around other demographics, newcomers, ethnicity, what's the changing shape of the populations. We look at age and we look at seniors and we look at households with children. But my personal preference at the HCBN would be to see more demographic tracking on ethnicities as presented through Statistics Canada data for these areas. And then, of course, we heard about the feedback from the ACPD. So perhaps it would be nice to have some more fulsome conversation by your department with that committee on other metrics that they may feel are important to track through that. And lastly, I don't really see anything around medium incomes in areas or framework of tracking of poverty indicators in the neighborhoods to see whether folks are being displaced or whether or not we're seeing an overall economic raising of the indicators in the area under those kind of social indicators. And I know that's data the city tracks pretty readily and fairly easily. So would be my preference, of course, to see some of those included. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair, Member Carl Andrews, thank you so much for your questions. I don't know which order I'm going to respond, but I will try. If I miss something, you let me know. So in terms of demographic changes, we can definitely look at to see what else, which other trends that you would like to be tracking. These were the ones that we showed are the ones that are readily available, that we felt confident in terms of data and pulling it out from the entire ArcGIS network. So that was very easily achievable and reportable through time. But if there's a particular demographic change that you are interested to see, we can definitely connect with you and see what they are, and we can explore and include. In terms of our interactions with advisory committee of people with disabilities, absolutely. This advisory committee has always been a key stakeholder to us, and we will definitely consult them during the design development and construction. Going back to your very first question on, I think it was more about rental accommodation.
Bedroom traffic. As part of an overall understanding of transit-induced displacements, which is a pretty well-published phenomenon, and when we get large rapid transit projects in major urban areas. So I'm curious around how the neighborhoods might be changing in terms of family-friendly units, the cutting up of existing apartment buildings that used to have 3-bedroom and 2-bedroom units into single condominium buildings, as we're seeing kind of evolving across the redevelopment of some of those buildings, and then what new units are being built in condominiums. So just kind of tracking that private market, because most housing is not done through the social sector. Most affordable housing is actually in the private market space. So.
In my opinion, we are open to explore tracking for those changes as long as we have reliable data and we know where the data is coming from if they're available. We are here to support any new other means of changes that you would like to see. It's just a matter of taking it back and and investigate, make sure that information we have access to and that the sources are reliable that we can bring back to the public. We can definitely connect again with yourself possibly to learn more and get a sense of what resources you may have access to or you recommend that we try to access. Thank you.
I'm certainly happy to take this conversation offline. Thank you very much for the openness.
Thank you.
Thank you, Member Andrus. Next up, we have Member Masek, Member Walsh, Member Mayo, and then Member Wilson.
Thank you, Manager Shala, for the presentation. Some questions around the recommended economic indicators. Wondering if there was any consideration given around a baseline of tracking of the number of existing businesses, and then in addition, the opening or closing of businesses, and similar to the social indicator, whether or not tracking commercial rent rates.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you very much for a question. I got your first part of the question, so I will respond to that, and you may need to repeat the second part. In terms of economic dimension, looking at employment, yes, we can look at either number of jobs, so that would be number of people working, or we can look at actual businesses, number of businesses, and set the baseline in say 2011 or a more appropriate baseline. So I know through our GIS, they have access to people working as well as number of businesses, so both can be reported. So once we know what we are setting the baseline, it's either people working or number of businesses, we will keep the same trend over time, and we will report on number of business changes over time. If you don't mind repeating your second part of your question through you, Madam Chair.
The second part was around tracking of the rents. So similar to the social indicators, there's a tracking of affordability of rents. So similarly, would there be a tracking of commercial rent rates?
Through you, Madam Chair, I believe, I don't remember who asked, but there was a question that came in during one of our consultations. When we looked at commercial component of affordability, the staff felt that we don't have a strong data or reliable data to report. But we can definitely take it back and look. But our initial, specifically looking at that question, we didn't feel comfortable reporting on simply because of the data resources that we may not have access to.
Through the chair, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Member Mayo, then Member Wilson. No, sorry, my apologies. Member Walsh first, then Member Mayo, then Member Wilson.
Thank you. Through the chair, just wanted to offer some feedback on the economic measures as well. Specifically, the business support says that it will be measured through the number of inquiries through the Hamilton Business Center. As far as I'm aware, that center is primarily advertised as more of a resource for up-and-coming businesses or getting off the ground with your business. And I wouldn't imagine that it's necessarily where a established business would go with construction concerns or any impacts during the actual construction timeline as well. So I just don't know that that would be the most appropriate measure of the difficulties that the businesses might face during construction. And then just to note that given that we're still about 2 years out from shovels in the ground, I don't think that we need to necessarily be excluding metrics that we don't have a current baseline for. I think there's still a bit of opportunity to build some really helpful measures like pedestrian tracking into the framework as well.
Through you, Madam Chair, thank you for the question. So you're right. This is kind of aligned with what Councillor Wang has been trying to convey to us in terms of customer satisfaction, business satisfaction, how people actually live and experience the corridor over time. So you're right. If an inquiry has not come in, it will not be recorded, and therefore it will not show up on our framework. This framework, based on the terms of reference, is meant to be numeric and quantitative. One thing I can offer, the homework we did between November and now, aligned with your question, was consulting with Metrolinx. Metrolinx has ongoing surveys that they conduct along the corridor. They receive feedback from businesses, and the city also has their own ways of receiving feedback. And these are some of the components which I don't think we have ever brought or reported on. I can definitely take back and see if those can be provided to get a true sense of what those inquiries are. And let's note, we are looking at changes over time. We are really looking at see how things are either getting higher or getting lower over time, and then we have to respond to them. Getting a soft sense of customer experience is a very important component, which I see opportunity to investigate and bring to this group as needed. And I think there was a second part to your question I might have missed.
It was just the note that given that construction or really big time construction is still 2 years off, I think that I remember you mentioning that some of the metrics had been excluded because they don't have a current baseline or aren't currently being measured in the city. So I think that there is still some time to start those measurements if they would be very beneficial to tracking the progress.
Through you, Madam Chair, we 100% agree with you. This is the list that you have in front of you is meant to be a low-hanging fruit, things that are accessible. We know they are out there. We have trust in the data sources, and that's the easiest way. Over time, as we learn more, to your point, we will definitely investigate what else is of value and significance, and we'll propose for your approval and reporting.
Okay, thank you, member. Next up is member, Director.
If you can allow,
yes, please.
Through Madam Chair, just about the whole purpose, if you look at the terms of reference, right? So we are not looking at justifying the LRT project, right? Because obviously there will be some impact during construction time period, right? So this is no mean to track the impact during the construction. So we were actually planning to track for the longer term, right? So this whole purpose of this tracking is not just because these are all the impacts have been already done through environmental project report, and Metrolinx has already provided how they're going to mitigate, there will be some business impacts during the construction and those kind of things. So that will be the Metrolinx responsibility to mitigate some of these concerns. So I just want to give an impression that this tracking does not mean that what is going to be impacting during the construction time period. So just to be clear, we'd like to track for the longer term and how we can improve upon and how we can utilize the lessons learned to other projects can be done, right?
That makes sense, and I totally agree. Just agree with Councillor Wang as well that it will be very important to track the customer service throughout this process and how everyone's managing to get by through the difficult time.
Thank you. Member Walsh. Now we have Member Mayo.
I did. Okay, sorry. Through the chair, thank you very much. There's two comments that I had. I very much appreciated this report and looked at it in detail. And I just had the employment indicator seemed to me that it just needed clarity that it will track both number of jobs in the tracking area and the number of employed persons living in the area. There's one part of the report that seemed to say that it will only track the number of employed persons. But data exists on the location of jobs as well, and both are different indicators and important to track separately. And secondly, I presented to this committee 2 years ago that the LRT corridor has a high representation of equity-deserving groups, such as racialized groups and Indigenous peoples. So echoing what Member Andrus was speaking about, I read the equity section of your report with great interest, and I was glad to see you considered equity issues in your presentation of the in your preparation of the report, but I didn't really see any outcomes related to equity in these indicators. Specifically, I wonder if tracking changes in racialized and Indigenous populations, as well as persons with disabilities along the corridor, could be included. The report mentions concerns around gentrification that led to inclusion of some of the indicators. I think tracking changes in equity deserving populations needs to be added, since concerns about gentrification are often about displacement of groups already facing discrimination and marginalization, and reducing diversity of neighborhoods. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. Member Mario, thank you so much for your question. And if I missed any components, please remind me. In terms of employment, you're right. We can either report by number of jobs or we can report by number of businesses. We will report if there's any preference at this point, because when we develop these indicators, we had a strong confidence that we are able to report either. If there's any preference from this group as part of the recommendation, which one is of importance, we can definitely continue that.
Manager, I'm just going to pause you there because the intervention from Member Mayo was distinct to a little bit more detail than that. So if you could just clarify the two categories you had mentioned.
Yeah, the two categories I was talking about was the number of jobs. Yeah, you're right, number of businesses would be a third one, but the two I was mentioning was number of jobs and number of employed persons. So number of jobs would mean people who may live anywhere and have a job in the corridor, and the number of employed persons would be people who are living in the corridor, have a job in or out of the corridor, but those are two different metrics, and both have value, I think.
I appreciate that clarification. I missed that. Thank you. So I can tell you now today, number of jobs and number of businesses are the two items that we have access to. So number of businesses as the baseline, and number of people employed within the area. So those are the two pieces that we have access to.
Maybe we can meet offline, because number of jobs as well, you should have access to through, there's two different sources that will give you that.
Absolutely. And I completely missed and forgot all about the other components of your question now.
Around equity issues and whether specifically a number of persons living in the corridor who identify with racialized groups are Indigenous, and also separately as well, number of persons with disabilities along the corridor, living in the corridor.
Through you, Madam Chair, as part of our next step, moving out today based on the approval of the indicators, we will be working with all service areas who helped us with developing the indicators, and we will try to apply some sort of a climate justice lens over those elements. A prime example would be, yes, we are reporting on employment, number of jobs or employment. A subcategory to that would be the number of businesses owned by Indigenous community. So that would be a way of applying. That's one prime example that comes to my mind. But our next step, walking out today, between now and 2026, is to report back and see how the climate justice lens can be applied to any of these indicators. And I think there was a question also related to advisory committee of people with disabilities, and yes, we'll connect with them to learn more about what are the significant areas that they would like us to track for. Like, I understand their the importance of what they do, and they would like to see during construction access to be maintained during construction and also as part of design. But I would like to learn more from the advisory committee. What are the items that they would like us to track for them over time?
Thank you. And then next up, we have Member Wilson.
Thank you, through the chair. I want to thank the staff for the hard work on this, and I'm thankful for all the members here for adding all the intricacies for veterans, things that we need to look at. But once we're moving forward on tracking all this, I'd like to ask what the structure or the procedure is for what we find out. So some things you're going to report major changes, great. So some things are great, less vacant lots, great. More affordable and housing, more employment, all good, good, good. But what if there's a major shift? We're talking about demographics, and suddenly, tracking area 3 suddenly has a huge change in seniors, or there is a huge, to your point, demographic shift, and suddenly there's a huge influx of a certain demographic. What do we do with that information? Who decides that's an issue, a problem, or is it just tracking? And if it's a problem, what is the mechanism to address it and resolve it and do something about the data?
Through you, Madam Chair, it could be the case. There could be some significant observations over time. The best thing that comes to my mind at this point, we would go, because our role is to compile the information and report in a structured manner, which is understandable by the audience. We would need to rely on the subject matter expertise in the city, the specific service area that can help us to respond to that change, or inform us why it happened or how it can be mitigated going forward, what tools or policies need to be implemented. All I can say is that there's going to be a lot of collaboration that we will need to have with other service areas that support us throughout the deployment of this framework.
Thank you. And Member Wilson, if I could add, another consideration here might be, it might identify further need. And then as a municipality, I think our obligation then is to talk to our community partners and other stakeholder partners about addressing those needs in the community. Might also inform our next iterations of master plans as it relates to recreation, as it relates to age-friendly municipalities, and et cetera. So the initial goal, right, is to not only measure the outcomes and impact of this massive generational transit project, but also help shape the ongoing conversation about the service needs too in our community.
Through the chair, thank you, everyone.
Okay, that exhausts our speakers list. Thank you, everybody, for the fulsome engagement and feedback to the team. At this point now, I need a mover and seconder to receive the presentation and approve the recommendations in the report. Moved by Councillor Maureen Wilson, seconded by Councillor Huang, and this will be an electronic vote. Vote is up. Ish. It's loading. There, yeah, there it is. And that carries unanimously. Thank you. And next item is 8.2, amendments to the outstanding business list. May I please have a mover and seconder to approve the amendments? Thank you, Councillor Cassar, seconded by Councillor Kretsch. That will also be an electronic vote. And that also carries. So any notices of motion, committee members? Seeing none, thank you to all the subcommittee members for your engagement today, your input to our agenda items. Also, thank you to PED staff as well as clerk staff for your efforts in preparations for today's meeting. I consider this meeting adjourned.